The CW's been making history with its superheroes for some time, from Smallville bringing back the TV shows, to Arrow creating this wave of them, to the two-night crossover that took us by storm, crossing channels, and now a four-night crossover. 3.5 maybe. Welcome to the heart of the stories we tell. My name is Rob, and tonight I will be reviewing the entire four-night crossover, Invasion, on CW, encompassing Supergirl, Flash, Arrow, and Legends of Tomorrow. So there's a lot to go over. There are whole seasons of all four shows, but right now I just want to talk about the four-night crossover. And even then, I'm pretty much throwing out night one, because as much as I like Supergirl, anything that happened involving the crossover also happened in Flash. So that kind of is starting me off on a grumpy note. And many of you probably have noticed that I was much grumpier in my Invasion story responses than I have been in any others. In general, I look for the good in episodes, and I've kind of been picking these apart. Well, to be honest, that's because I was really hyped. Invasion is one of my favorite comic book stories, and is definitely something that I thought could be a huge boon for this series. But I also understand that there are limits. They have special effects budgets, they have actor availability issues, they have shooting schedules, and you know what? It's just really hard to write for an ensemble cast, let alone an ensemble full of stars. But as I do my quick look here, I'm dealing with what the story is, and where the problems with the story are, not why they are. So, some of these, as much as I'm saying they're problems, I understand why they're problems. What I want to do is make a quick list: the good, the bad, and the ugly. Before we do, though, I'm going to just give it a quick rating, and I want to do that first so that you understand where I'm coming from. I'm giving this an Electrum. That's somewhere in between silver and gold. That means that it had a lot of good things going for it, but it wasn't exactly up to a gold medal response. Let's get started with the good, and there's a lot of it. The first part of the good I'm going to go with is going to be all of the action set pieces. Nothing says comic crossover like a big, drawn-out fight sequence, and there were quite a few. In fact, many of you have already made memes up about the fact that it was similar at the end to the Avengers fight in Civil War, Avenger vs. Avenger. But you know what? This goes so far beyond that, because this was a TV show doing it on the budget. So kudos to them. They had a lot of characters, and they used their powers well. One of the best fight sequences of the entire night, though, was in night 2. Well, night 1, really, The Flash, when they had those mind-controlled heroes going against Star heroes. Because, let's be honest, Arrow fighting off White Canary, Speedy, and Spartan, while Flash has to take on Firestorm, Supergirl, and the Atom, was great. And you know what? I love the fact that they went back to Flash throwing those lightning bolts. And I like the fact that it really came down to Flash versus Supergirl, because that was one hell of a fight. The second thing I don't really have a lot of good examples of, but they had a lot of humor in it. And you know, that's something the shows always do well, so I'm going to kind of gloss over that good. The third one, though, is the heart-wrenching moments. Those things that really pulled to those of us that really watched, especially the 100th episode of Arrow. I mean, if you really like Arrow and you weren't almost in tears with him saying goodbye to his parents, or Thea not wanting to go away, then you're just dead inside. And all the stuff with Barry and not trusting himself, and you know what? That can be my fourth good thing. Consequences of actions. The Flashpoint has ramifications, and I love that, because I hate when shows don't show those ramifications. And that leads to yet another one. The ramifications of Stein messing with his own timeline, and now having a daughter, and the fact that he couldn't give her up, not even if he wanted to. It's just, again, heart-wrenching moments. And finally, I'm kind of geeking out about the Hall of Justice. I mean, okay, yeah, fine, it's just a Star Labs hangar, but oh my god, it's Hall of Justice that's one step closer to Super Friends and Justice Leagues, and we already had the Justice Society, and I said how much I geeked out about Justice Society, but this is all of them working together, and it was the first real big team-up, and oh my god, you know what? Give them props just for how ambitious it was to try to put this together. The first TV Justice League. And they met in the Hall of Justice. So now to those nits, because we're going to switch it up to the bad. And when it was bad, it was pretty bad. We're going to start with what I call the Firestorm effect. The firestorm effect I talk about in Legends a lot, when a powerful character has to be sidelined just because they're too powerful for the story. And they did this to Supergirl relatively a lot. I understand the reasoning. She's the one that gets mind controlled, but then even when she's mind controlled, she doesn't use her powers that effectively. She's the one that has to be told, oh no, you have to take a back seat. Think about this, Ollie. I really want you to think about this. Why would you sideline your best player? To make you feel more comfortable? This makes you seem less like Batman and more like Stupid Man. My second complaint is this message from Barry. All it did was kind of extend the story. All it did was provide filler while they were trying to not trust each other. And you know what? I understand that not trusting each other is a classic superhero trope, but I really think that with how much they rushed that second episode, that Flash episode, they really didn't need that. And finally, in the bad category, we have missing characters. We're going to start with Supergirl. At the beginning of this, Barry goes to Supergirl and says, hey, there's an alien invasion and I need your help. She suits up and comes with him. Hey, wait a second. Full stop. Isn't there a Daxmite and a Martian or two right on her team that she could say, hey, they need help with an alien invasion and we're more powerful than anyone else? What about her cousin even? Okay, I understand they didn't want to move all the actors, but still. Secondly, we then have Flash himself. Alright, Vibe and Killer Frost are just sitting this one out. Okay, then we have the fact that he could go to Earth 3 and get Jay Garrick. He's going to do that next week. Yeah, like this wasn't an important moment. They also have Wally sitting out. And I mean, they really firestormed him. He's just as fast as Flash, and he, of course, gets knocked unconscious just fast enough to be, oh no, it's too dangerous. And finally, we have Team Arrow. I want you to think about this. Why isn't Ragman part of this team up? Almost at all. And what about Artemis? We know she's betraying the team because we've been following. But seriously, Team Arrow shouldn't know that. So shouldn't Artemis have been part of this the whole time? And okay, maybe Thea is much weaker as a character than I thought, but let's drop her off home because of this experience that Ollie's perfectly fine with. Doesn't quite mash up with me. Several of these heroes that didn't show up in episodes were only because they aren't slotted in them, and that kind of is annoying. Especially when we have the legends come into Flash, but we leave the newbies on the ship. And I'd like to remind you, the newbies are Commander Steel, who's pretty strong and invulnerable, and Vixen, who's one of the few people who's used to working in a superhero team dynamic. So then we're going to move on to the ugly, and there's only two things to talk about. The pacing and the Red Sky crossover. To be fair, the Red Sky crossover is part of the pacing. Supergirl really had nothing to do with this. In fact, every scene that takes place in Supergirl also takes place in Flash that has to do with the crossover. So, the problem is that by skipping night 1 of the 4-night crossover, they then had to jam-pack episode 2 with all the exposition. That's where we learned that they are the Dominators, that's where we learned that they've come before in 1951, and let's be honest, once we knew we knew the time machine was coming into effect. That's where we had to learn a whole bunch of these things, and we had to get the crew together, the whole team. And once we had to get everyone together in that episode, we had this problem that we couldn't put everyone together because we needed to develop, and those developments just didn't take fast enough. And a good portion of episode 3 was used up because it was the 100th episode of Arrow, and they had to do the It's a Wonderful Life thing for Ollie. And you know what? That was tear-jerking and awesome, and some of the best personal Arrow story. It really did take away from time from the alien invasion plot. Now, overall, I liked the series, but the pacing needs to be improved next time. And part of that will happen just by default, because everyone knows each other now. But now I want to just switch gears and talk about where I want to see the Dominators go from here. If I were the writers, I would totally have the Dominators hit Earth on Earth 38, because Kara already said that the Kryptonians have experience with it. But don't do a crossover. Just have Team Supergirl with Superman, Martian Manhunter, all of them beat their asses. Then, I want to see the Dominators become a threat on Legends of Tomorrow. Maybe do a Legion of Superhero type thing. And finally, Arrow is getting kind of old. It's hit episode 100, which is the magic number for a lot of things. But it's also gotten to the point where the ratings were slipping last season. Now, they've come back pretty hardcore this season from everything I've been told. But I'm still wondering if they're not thinking about whether or not that could go on. I hope this crossover did good. As I'm recording this, I don't have access to them being like, woohoo, we totally hit everything we wanted, or, oh man, not enough people tuned in. I just don't know. But my gut reaction is that they put a lot of work and effort into this, and it would hopefully have paid off. And as such, we're going to have a much tighter CW universe going forward. Now, I would have liked that Gene Bomb to have gone off. I would have liked it to have created a whole bunch of new metahumans, maybe a Static Shock spin-off because of the Big Bang. But either way, things are still looking up, and we're getting a new The Ray cartoon series on CW Seed shortly, dealing with the Freedom Fighters. We still have the GSA stuff we could explore, and I really want this Hall of Justice to keep coming into it. I want to see another team. I wouldn't mind seeing a 5-night crossover next year with a 5th series, but if we can't get that, how about if we have to replace something, we replace Arrow with a team that Arrow can be on so that we can keep Mel around. Maybe something that would be a Justice League Task Force type, where we call in individuals based on the need, so we could switch around the heroes for each story, so we don't have the Legends problem of, oh man, we didn't want this character in this story, he can't help now. But that's just my hope going forward. But let me know down in the comments what you think. Did you enjoy this crossover? Was there something you thought we should do differently? And then like, subscribe, and share this video so that we can build a community, and you can help me as we take a walk through the heart of the stories we tell. Thanks for watching, and good night and happy holidays.